The crosswise grain is the section of weave on fabric that runs perpendicular to the lengthwise grain of the fabric from selvage to selvage. So again, we know the lengthwise grain is parallel to the selvage, so the crosswise grain is going to be running the opposite direction. The bias runs diagonally across the fabric and has more stretch than the lengthwise or crosswise grain. This is especially important when working with woven fabrics. A lot of times certain pattern pieces will ask you to lay the pattern piece on the bias to give it more stretch. Parts of a pattern piece. So this is just an example picture of what a pattern piece may look like. So similar to how I noted our different pattern pieces in our sweatshirt, this runs through the different parts of a pair of pants pattern piece. Did you know it was a pair of pants? If you look at it, you can see that this would be the front or back of one leg of a pair of pants. So you can see the notch marking, and that shows you it's where two pieces should be joined together. You see the grain line, the crotch line, the inseam, which would be the inner seam of the leg, the side seam or the outside of the leg, the hem, and then a double line that shows where you could lengthen or shorten the pattern. This also shows you the cutting line, the center front, and the dotted line, which would show you where to sew. So it's always important to look at your pattern pieces before you begin laying them out and before you begin cutting especially, and note their different parts and their different symbols. This is an example of a pattern layout. A pattern layout is a map that depicts where pattern pieces should lie on the fabric, and we try to follow this as best possible. The goal is to not waste fabric because you never know if you'll need extra, and so we try to strategically place the pattern pieces so that they all fit. You can use the map, it's very helpful in your pattern directions, but if your fabric isn't working with following that map, you can be creative and come up with your own pattern layout. Finally, one more important term to note is interfacing. So interfacing is weird. A lot of times people think it looks kind of like a dryer sheet. It's a textile, it's a non-woven, and it's used on the wrong side of fabric to make the area of the garment more rigid or stiff. It can be used to stiffen or add body to fabric. Such interfacing could be used on shirt collars. We're going to use it for our sweatshirt on the inner part of the pocket. Sometimes it's used along where buttonholes are, and it just adds a little bit of body. So we use interfacing mostly in class that is fusible interfacing. It has a bumpy side that is placed against the fabric, and then we place a pressing cloth over the interfacing and adhere it to the fabric by pressing for an indicated amount of time on the packaging, usually about 30 seconds, but there also is sew-in interfacing that must be sewn around the edges to adhere it.